Welcome back to the shop. My name is Tony, and today we have got this amazing burl. This came from Burl Wood Supply Company, and a great guy, veteran, does all of his own milling, gets out there and finds some of the best pieces of wood I've ever seen. I've had this big one sitting around for a little over a year now, cut down from a larger slab I got from him, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to capture this. Do I want to leave a live edge up here around this with some interesting burl figure? Do I want to cut this round and cast it in epoxy and leave that all trapped in there? There's some really beautiful little figure here. You can see all sorts of little eyes and rectangles. But I think, being that I don't have a resin pressure pot or anything like that, my best bet's going to be to go ahead and try to maximize out a live edge from this. Basically 4.5 inches out to cover this whole round burl as my rim. So I think what we're going to do with that center marked out kind of where it is I'm going to go ahead and trim this to 9 inches using the flat side over here. Hopefully we'll get something cool out of this over here we can use for something else. And then after that, I'll rebalance it again, and then we'll trim it until we get our 9 by 9 square. And from there, might knock a couple of little edges off, but we'll put it right on the lathe with this side towards the headstock and start rounding it up to see if we can get a really beautiful shape out of it. I've been tempted to try and do a hollow form, leaving this whole burl on the outside, a beautiful round base on it, and then just a small hole up here as a hollow form. So I know we'd have the figure on the outside, which we could capture, which should be beautiful. So I'm trying to kind of just play with it in my head and see what's going to be the best way to maximize the most beauty out of this one piece of wood. Stick with me, we'll see what we do. Okay, off the bandsaw, we've got our 9 by 9 block here. So with all these beautiful eyes and thing, yep, got 9 and 9. So really don't know a way to, without drilling a hole at my bottom, to put it on the circle jig to get it round. So I think I'm just going to take my time nipping those corners away. I'm going to go get my little spinner too and just get a couple of pre and post spins on this, because that is one pretty piece of wood, and I don't think this picture's giving it justice. Alrighty, I've got the new microphone on too, so hopefully we will get all this on the some decent sound, because you can hear, maybe you can hear, maybe you can't hear the heater running in the back. So what I did to start is I just took it over to the drill press and drilled a little flat hole here for my four spur part. There's no way for me to put a face plate on this, so I'll get out the double bearing live center. Fortunately, this is very, very similar to the one that One Way makes, but it was a company called Savannah Toolworks, and I don't know if they're still around. I haven't been able to find anything about them or get my hands on another one of them. But there we go, everything fits in there pretty nice. So we'll probably should have marked the bottom off on this one, which I think I'm going to do that before we go, just so I get as good a chance as representing this piece of wood the best it can be. So I'm just going to grab a standard old pencil out of my Red Raven pencil holder and a ruler, and we'll just match these points up here, almost a full 12 inches across. But we know once we get turning it won't be quite that. Wow, I'm gonna have to get a longer ruler. It's not perfectly square. So bigger ruler out here. Just want to try to get as close to a center mark as we can get, and then we'll eyeball it, make sure we like how that looks. And that way when we pop it up here, we'll have the best chance of maximizing our blank. So pull that straight up, Get it on the pin. Close. Just back it off and back it back in. There we go. We're right on the middle. Okay, now this obviously is a very sharp piece of wood. We have all of these burls, these little things up here. Boy, you land your hand on them wrong, not pleasant. And my thought for this piece so far, and again, subject to change, is that I'm going to round up the edges, just get it to as round as I can before touching any of the burl up here. And then we'll review it at that point, carve it down to a tenon. And I do think I want to go for some sort of hollow form and leave as much of this natural burl on top as we can. That might change as we move along, but for now, that is the plan. So I'm going to stand to the side, speed to 0 right now, pull my tool rest out of the way, and let's see how it spins up. 650 RPM, no shaking on the lathe. I think that's where we'll start out turning. So I will go ahead, sharpen up my gouges, say a quick prayer, and make sure that we get a little bit of footage of this getting rounded. So we have quite a bit of ways to go before we're round, but you can see what we're dealing with here. Some beautiful hard stuff mixed in with some a little bit softer stuff. That knot went flying out of here, which is not going to impact us here, it doesn't look like. We'll be rounding up around that anyway. So I'll just keep at that, and something interesting happens, I'll bring you back in. So we just lost a big piece of bark here, and we'll see if we can collect those pieces up from where they went and glue them back. If not, this will be a very interesting hollow form because that will show into the fixture. I always hate getting little catches inside like that. I thought that bark was secure. This one didn't feel loose when I was playing with it. So I started rounding over this way and then bring it down into a base, but let's see what we can do about filling that up. So what I have decided to do, see, we have these beautiful knots. This is where we lost a big bark inclusion. I went ahead and CA glued down all the bark around here, and the inclusion anyway, see if we can hold it down. And we still have all these nice eyes and stuff on top. So what I'm still planning is obviously the base is going to be way smaller. I was just trying to give myself some stability to work with. So I am probably going to stop and fill this with Tight Bond and African blackwood sawdust. That way I can load that all in nice and tight, let that dry overnight, pack it in really well, and see how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and finish getting my base in shape before I do that because I don't want to waste the blackwood. But you can kind of see the direction we're heading now when you take a look at where we're at. So obviously pretty hideous. You look up here in the top, you see where I was leaving a big foot down here to give me something to work with if I wanted to carve some feet on this, which I think will be enough material here for me to carve 3 little tripod feet. So I'm going to keep rounding this down and leave a big thick tenon on the bottom. I will make that decision at the end. But right now I just want to get it perfectly round. I still have I have a little, nope, thought I had a flat. Yeah, I have a little flat right here. It still has to be taken care of. And then I think we're going to come down enough to polish this burl eye here. It's a big one like that, but it was already cut by the chainsaw. So I'll take my time getting that down. See, we got a little chainsaw mark here too. So we'll get rid of this stuff here, finish rounding our base down to where our main tenon is going to be. Big, thick tenon so I can carve some feet in it. And then we'll fill in our holes and let that sit overnight. And that is where we're going to stop for tonight. I'm going to go ahead and mix up that blackwood now. Little African blackwood, fill those big inclusions to see if we can get a nice smooth finish on the outside. But everything's round, all the flats are gone. Haven't started working on the tenon yet. I want to make sure I have plenty of mass to get the rest of the work I want to get done in. All right, that's it for the day. Okay, we've let it sit for a couple of days. We're back out in the shop now. It's Friday already, believe it or not. And we got this filled up here. I can still feel it's a little soft, but that's kind of was expected because this is just glue and sawdust, so it's going to have a little air in it. Everything else filled up pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is set up the camera, and all I'm going to do is just kind of shear scrape this off so we get a nice smooth surface, and then we're going to go back over and fill this with a little bit more CA so we get a nice hard surface before we start working this tenon. We might get to the tenon today, but so far project's coming along pretty good. So keep you in the loop. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop and just see how that's coming off. We're getting a nice, yeah, it's not pulling out or anything like that, so we shouldn't have too much trouble. Just keep that shear scrape going until we get where we want. So we've been taking off a little of the CA glue here. It'll be just a real slow process. I'll probably speed this up for you. That's working. Starting and stopping to make sure we're getting good cuts. Getting everything flat. See how that fill right there looks just like blackwood, so it's going to really match nicely to the whole body of the piece. Got a little ways to go up here, and I'm going to have to come around, move the camera so we can get up on this section here. But still a lot of stuff proud, so I think we're in the right direction here. Like normal, I've got my Star Bond accelerator and my Star Bond medium. This is the best you can for filling in little imperfections and still maintaining the same color and look you have. So I have a couple things here that are still little divots. So all I do is just a little inlet, let it roll in on its own. Don't need to force anything. There's a couple of little lines here that are still below the surface, so we want to bring those proud so we keep our diameter. And then the area here that I had to fill with blackwood and type bond from earlier in the week, fill that over and get that nice and hard. Sometimes you'll have a nice proud surface for your glue, but a little air gets trapped under or something, so as you scrape down with a shear scrape, you'll start to find other little holes and stuff. And if you just take your time and fill them all in nicely, the finished product ends up looking beautiful. And of course, it's always nice to have a piece of wood that doesn't require any filling or any work like that, but I haven't found a lot of burl that isn't going to have pinholes, bark inclusions, things that need a little extra love. So we just take our time to do that, and we end up with a really pretty piece when we're done. Now, I have never tried this sawdust method before with the Titebond to make my original or my initial filling for a big blowout, because remember we had a big piece of the bark. I keep saying remember because for me it was 3 days ago, for you it was 2 minutes ago in the video. But going through and doing this filling and then putting a little CA over the top of it to hold it nice and tight will give it a beautiful appearance when it's done. It'll still look very organic. You won't have to worry about a cheap plasticky kind of look and feel like I was originally going to go for, like trying to really make an embellishment out of it. And if I'd filled it full of gold foil and some other stuff, probably wouldn't have had the same aesthetic that I'm going for here. So I'm just kind of painting over the whole surface of it. Some CA, make sure it levels out nice and flat. Don't have any bubbles. Hit a few squirts of accelerator just to harden it up. Hurt. And I don't want any of this bark to break loose, because it's really kind of a part of the whole aesthetic for this piece is this big bark inclusion that wraps all the way around, ends on this little knot over here. So this kind of filling might seem tedious, but for me, I actually enjoy this part of the process, trying to figure out how I can maximize the aesthetic of what I'm working on, get the best possible look for it. I think when we go to hollowing, there's a chance that we could end up losing this whole thing that I did here. You know, it's always a possibility once you actually get to the hollowing process. But I think we have some good stuff here. So now we're just going to take a few more, won't be aggressive, just again more light passes like I was doing earlier. So I had this out of the chuck to work on another project while it dried. You'll see that in another video if you guys stick around for that. See how that turns out pretty nice. Still a little soft under there though. So see if that holds up. And we're still not completely done up here. So we have to come around and get on that a bit. Yeah, I was working on making those scoops, kind of like Richard Raffin makes and Thomas Love and a few of the other turners out there. I have a little different twist on mine, and I just bought, which I'm not using in this video, a multi-camera kind of setup so I could do 2 angles at one time, which was something fun to learn. I mean, it's a brand new, this whole videoing is kind of new to me. I used to do real video work, like television commercials and stuff for cable TV, nothing fancy, nothing you would have ever seen unless you lived in Colorado. But it's a whole different world, you know, filming with the digital video cameras now and stuff. It's just a whole other world, and I'm really having a good time learning about it. Okay, let's see if we can get that all flat. I might even get out a nice sharp spindle gouge for some of this final passes here. That's flattened up beautifully. You can still see we're coming in a little, not quite proud. We didn't make it all the way up to there. So let's move the camera. I'm going to be making my passes coming from the other direction, so that way hopefully you guys can see them from here. pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and take some of this foot down so we can get it into a chuck. Not have to worry about it moving around on us. I'm going to have to reset up to come from the bottom up on this, so I don't want that hard line there. We almost have our tenon all set up over here, so I'll go ahead and finish that first. So we're going to hold this down here in the one-way stronghold jaws. I got a nice flat up here. Let's move you around so you can see. So in our tenon design here, we've got a flat here, got our nice lip where the jaws will set up against that, and then the depth here with our dovetail. So the jaws should set up at that. They're a little more than 5 inches across, and then we'll have this amount of material here to carve our little feet for the bottom of this. So that's the plan right now. So I'm going to get finishing shaping the outside, some shear cuts, and then we'll get ready to flip it around. Okay, we're ready for the first coat of grit. So I'm going to go ahead and, before I flip it around, I like to get at least one coat of the good grit on there. Kind of protects the wood and gives me an idea of what it is it's going to look like. So since this one's a little bit of a funky one with all the sharp points, I'm just going to take a clean bit of towel and rub in some of this to start with. We should get to start seeing how some of this grain's going to look. I'm going to try to keep it off of the eyes up here, so we have to clean that all off later. Of course, we'll really rub this in when the time comes. Just spin it up and buff it. But there you go. There's that figure in there. Some really pretty chatoyancy. And again, this is just the pumice and mineral oil, just the grit. We'll let that kind of soak in a little bit. We won't be filling any of the extra pores and stuff with this. We'll wait for the hard wax. But this will take out any of the last of the little sanding marks and lines we have. We sanded this to 600 is all I did. This cool chainsaw scar up here that I'm going to leave. You always get to make design decisions like that, right? Like, hey, do I leave that cool little defect from the chainsaw, or do I try to turn it out? And I kind of sometimes think that it's kind of cool to see that it came from wood, especially when my goal here is to be making a pretty exotic looking gallery piece when I'm done. I'll have a small opening on the other end. We'll leave all those burl eyes and stuff up there. I think you call them burl eyes. And it should make for a really pretty piece, I think. Okay, let's make sure we've got everywhere. I'm going to start out pretty slow because of all of the potential areas where I could hurt myself. So let's we're at about 600 RPM right now. And then we turn around and turn that corner. This is where I'm afraid of starting to get my fingers caught. I also don't want to get little pieces of towel caught everywhere. That looks pretty darn good. Again, there's no shine on there at all. That's just our shop grit, just so we know what it's going to look like. I think our fill over here turned out pretty good. I still see some little sanding scratches. Sometimes in the CA, it's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like epoxy, where you don't really get a perfect sanding in there. You can really see the difference. So I'm probably going to have to hit that with some white diamond on the buffing wheel when it's time for that. Let's go ahead and set up with a clean shop towel. We'll go ahead and put a coat of the harder wax on. Part protective, part shine, but our final shine is going to come when we take it over to the buffing wheel and hit it with a white diamond and then with a pure carnauba at the end. The other option I have for this would be to put a spray poly on it. And I haven't done many like that, and I'd be a little reluctant on something like this to experiment, to be honest, because this one I do have big plans for. You can see the as we start to rub that in, how the chatoyancy pops quite a bit more. On our chainsaw damaged spot. Needing a little bit more. It's thirsty. This dry wood does, it's kind of interesting watching it kind of soak up the mineral oil, the beeswax, just kind of watch it go in. But we'll just get a nice coat of this on the whole thing. And I have done one burl in the past where I sanded it all the way to, I think it was 10,000 grit. Spent hours sanding just because it kind of, every time I sanded it seemed to just a whole new dimension of the lumber came out. And I don't think that that's worthwhile for this. I think for where it's going to be sitting, it won't see a whole lot of hand holding and hand touching. Okay, let's go ahead and melt that in. Got it up to about 1,000 RPM now. Real slow. Just continue to move in the towel. You can see the reflection in there. In the camera, I hope you can see how it's kind of mirroring up on us a little. Anyway, that's not going to be the final finish because we still have a lot of work to do on this piece. That gives us a great idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, I've got it all flipped around now. Fit right into the chucks. You can see we're just got exactly the right size on that tenon there. And then we've got to look in here and see our hole, which was only big enough for my 4-center prong. So what I'm looking at now is I've got, before I got out of Forstner to try to drill a bigger hole, I think I'm going to take some of that extra material down very carefully. So we get a little flatter spot to start with the Forstner. There'll still be some edges on it, but I don't want to create a quick rip in the tenon and end up having to scrap our whole project. So I'm going to peel a little of that away for a flat spot to get the Forstner out so we can drill our starting hole for the hollow form. Okay, I'm going to try to open up a little hole here so we get a flatter spot for the Forstner bit. A little hairy. Okay, we've opened it up a bit. You see all that beautiful figure in there. And I'm going to now try to go ahead and drill into this space. So we'll still have room to get in the hollow. Obviously this isn't going to be a super thin hollow form, but we'd like to at least hollow it out to lighten it and also give it an aesthetic that would be generally pleasing. We've got this round enough here that we know we can make a nice stopper for it. Something out of black wood is what I'm planning on. But right now, I think that's just about where we're going to be. I might take this down a little bit more, but I think we can get all of our hollowing tools into that size hole if we're patient and slow. I'm not going to be able to run my steady rest out here, I don't think, unless I get it right back here maybe, and we'll throw some blue tape on there and see if that's the case. But we definitely don't want to risk ruining what we got so far, huh? So put in our outside, making sure nothing's going wrong out here. Yeah, I think that's going to be our next step, is going to drill that hole. Started out at about 350 RPM. There we go. Cross your fingers for me. A little hairy. Okay, I've reset the drill bit to give myself the depth. We're going to go for a full 3.5 inches deep here. Put that face shield back on. sure that we deep enough. 3.5 inches to there. Leaving about 3/4 of an inch on the bottom. So that should be enough to do our turn. Boy, there's such beautiful wood in there that even drilled pretty. But we'll come in here at a slight angle. We want to keep this pretty thick. And then we'll come out for the bottom and just work our way in. Once we get down about here, which we're gonna have to really figure out with the visualizer up, we'll be able to see where we're at. I just don't want to have any big holes pop through on this. If we get one, like if this ends up being an opening here, that might actually be a very cool effect, and you'll be able to kind of see the wall thickness, but we don't want to lose any of our height here. So this slope here, if we lose that and it's all open on the inside, I don't think they'll have the same look I'm going for. But you can see what the top where the stopper is going to go will still be surrounded by burl, and then we're just going to have to slowly come in here and work our way in. We'll probably start with about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick wall there. We'll just keep an eye on it in the visualizer to make sure that we're not going to poke through a side where we don't want it to. And really all we're going to do is take some of the weight out of this. It's perfectly dry, so I don't have to worry about it cracking. And right now we could already put a stopper in it, or even this is kind of silly, but I get shorter ones of these. You can put a glass tube in it even, and put live flowers in it. But I don't think for the customer that I want this for, who I don't have yet, I'm still thinking about who would want this. It's going to have to be a real stunner. So let's not take any shortcuts. I'm going to set up the visualizer, and you guys have seen that. There's another video you can check. I'll put actually I'll point up in a corner and add a box, so you guys can click on that if you want to see how I built my visualizer. Did it for under $100. It's nowhere near obviously the quality you'd get if you bought Trent Bosch's the real unit with the big screen and stuff. But if you're on a budget and you don't plan on doing a ton of hollowing as your main thing, it's just something you do now and then, this visualizer really does the trick. So I'll get that set up, and we'll be back in start hollowing. Oh boy, got a little snow last night. Shoveled up what I could, but time to head into the shop and get back to turning that burl. So we're back in the shop. I'm going to turn on my visualizer monitor here, make sure we're all set up good. Yesterday I had set up for this. I cut the kind of the rim I was looking for here, nice and round. We drilled our depth hole, and it's time for us to start in on the hollowing. I'm gonna double check that our chuck is nice and tight. It always, this is always the part where there yeah, it's nice and tight. Get nice and nervous as we try to do something, you know, small hole here. It doesn't look all that small really. It's an 1 1/8 hole, so it's not like a Kevin Jeskill or Mike Jakovsky or one of these guys that do the teeny weeny little holes. But you know, we've got a challenge for sure. I'm hoping we don't get any catches and lose this. And my goal, again, I'm just kind of going over this in my head since we're, you know, I think we're on day 4 of this project now, is to hollow in but not pierce the top. So this is our lowest spot. So we'll be coming in at that angle when we look on the, so I can see exactly how far in we're going to go on that up on my visualizer. So we'll be real careful. We're just going to start up at the top here and just take small passes. We're not going to go for super thin hollow form, obviously, until we get down past the lowest spot in the rim, which is here. We'll try to hollow all of this down here nicely and then leave a kind of a chunkier top up here. I might go in with some carving tools and try to carve up into it, but there's just area here that we can't go too thin on because of the different heights. And I think leaving that natural burl on top is going to really pay off. When I'm done, we'll brush it gently, and I'm going to coat it probably with a poly on the top to bring it some shine. I might even use a super watered down or thin epoxy set. I do have some self-leveling tabletop epoxy that you can brush on and does a pretty good job. But we'll see. We'll see what we get to when we get to it. But for right now, this is where we are. So I'm going to spin this thing up probably about 700 RPM, and we'll take super, super light passes. I'll most likely do a lot of speeding up on this so that it gets a little redundant just watching something go in and out of the hole, and I'll bring you back in when we're ready. Okay, face shield on. There we go. So we're already in at a pretty good, ooh, those are prickly. Those are prickly. So what I need to do is mark the lowest spot, which is here, with a little blue tape. So as it's spinning up on top, I can see in relationship to where the tool is, where we're not going to end up hitting one of these things here. So I think these two spots here are almost the same, but I'll go ahead and put a little tape on there. This is really a safe visual reference for us, just letting us know, hey, if we're below this line on the screen, we're not going to be taking anything out. So, because where we want to be on this particular project, oops, it's not going to want to stick to all that wax. Because obviously we want to not pierce the top. If we pierce the side, we'll be okay. We can live with that. But piercing the top will ruin kind of the aesthetic we've been going for on this one. So I think that this method here should give us a visual reference. Also means I'm going to probably have to redo the outside again, but we kind of knew that going in, didn't we? That the outside was not going to hold together for us in terms of the finish, that it was just a kind of a temporary finish. Get those to hold together. I can put a piece on top of them. Very sticky. Again, this may or may not work. I've never tried this method before, but I would like something on the visualizer to let me know that I'm not, as long as I'm behind the blue line, that I'm safe in the depth, you know, of the vessel here. And hopefully that won't just go flying off. We'll find out in a second here. Let's give it a go-go. I'm seeing if that line does make a difference. It does. And I can still see where my tool's going to go, even over the line. So right here, now we're at the lowest spot. So we know from there, if we take nice light passes, that everything below there is going to be fine. So it's going to be a lot of that. Very gentle, slow passes so that we don't risk a catch. Just a lot of stopping to clear out all the material from there. And a lot of going back in and checking. Yes, I can't even get my finger all the way in that. We're starting to see this be the lowest spot here, so we can go ahead and widen that out a little bit. I think the chattering is actually my air gun. Everything else looks locked down pretty good. So these kind of projects, for me anyway, I'm sure you watch guys like Trent, whose tools I'm using right here, Nicolette, some of these guys who can just, they fly through some of this. Mike Tchaikovsky's got a beautiful, oh yeah, we've got a nice thin here. Here's about as thin as we want to go. And of course it's going to be thicker on the tall spots, but that's very nice. You put your put your finger in there and it feels good. So we'll keep moving our way this direction, and then when we get it to our final thickness, which I need to avoid going through the sides, we'll start going down to the bottom, which should be fairly simple. To be honest, it shouldn't be a huge challenge once we get past the blue tape. Get past this line, and we know we're just hollowing a bowl. And of course it's a little different doing it outside the bowl, looking up at a screen, but we should give us a good indication. And I'm also going to have to move to I can see where our spot will be, where I'll have to move to the bent tool. But we got those all set up, ready to go, so not a problem. To be honest, the only reason I'm leaving the camera running right now, this is a note to myself, is in case something happens. I'll probably end up editing most of this footage out. But if something goes wonky, I want to catch it on the camera so that you guys can learn from my mistakes if one arises. All right. So I'm going to move to the slightly bent version of this tool, which means taking off the handle, pulling out the existing cutter. It's probably time for me to rotate that head as well, so I'll mark that for the next time I pull the straight tool out to rotate the cutter. That way you always have a sharp cutter in there. And again, these are the Trent Bosch 5/8 inch small tip carbides. I have the 3/4 also, and the 5/8 inch, excuse me, the 3/4, yeah, I have the 3/4 inch version as well. And I've been very pleased with them. Just want to make sure I get the right angle in there so we get good clearance. And if you guys saw the video I did earlier, where I went right through the side because I didn't hook my visualizer up and I was just trying for a thin wall, thought it was a quick project, take me too long to set up the visualizer, was my rationale, and I ended up just zapping it pretty good. All right, so you can see where we are now. Right here is almost to the blue line. But okay, we're not touching anything inside. So let's get our face mask on. Take some really gentle passes here. We got a lot of shavings on that one. The further in we go, the more it fills up. So yeah, starting to make the sound of the hollow form. Okay, this is pretty smooth into the here now. Getting past where my little organic feeler gauges are going to work. We're getting a little deeper and deeper. Almost past where I can reach. So being almost past where I can reach is going to be hard for me to measure, so I'm going to have to rely entirely on what I'm seeing visually. And we'll see if I can clean that up and not come back to it again. It's that time where take a little break from standing up and make sure our chuck's nice and tight still. Okay, took a little break there and ready to keep back at it. I'm sure you guys can hear the change of tone as I get near that big inclusion. And you can also see that we're getting more shavings now because instead of just chips. keep looking to see if air is escaping somewhere else in the fixture, or in the vessel here. And I think, I can't feel it obviously because it's too deep. Let me see if I can get you up so you can see this here. Hold on. See if you can get in the screen up here. All right, there we go. So if you look, this bark inclusion right here, and you can see the tool head right there. This is what we're encountering right now. So we come across this inside of this, we're hitting that bark inclusion. And right now we're still, it's really hard to see from the angle here of how far close to the sides we are. But you know, it's still about 1 inch thick. But right here, I'm in that bark inclusion now. So trying to get some of that material out is what I'm working on now. But you can see the bump right here as the head moves. So this is the area that I'm going to be trying to work right now. And we'll see if we can get in there with the angle we're at right now. I've got the tool completely free. Let me reset you. Everything's set up again. Had a really good idea here to just go ahead and keep going deeper. And I've kind of felt out the inside, tried to take some pictures in there. And right now you can see how deep we are in there. I feel like we can still get into the sides over here and get a little bit more material out. And I think that's what I'm going for. I don't want to take any shortcuts on this one. So I'm taking super light cuts because you see how far in there we are. And there's that big bark inclusion, so I don't want to jack that thing up. Blow it out the other side of our hollow form. I can't reach in anymore to feel if there's anything wonky in there. It's too far down now. So all I can do is visually inspect it. And I've been doing that by getting out of the angle of the light here and just kind of peering in. It's looking pretty good. If we get out our depth gauge here, this whole entire piece from this very top is 5 inches. And we are, oh, and I have to loosen that up. My bad. So we are at 4. So we have 1 inch now all the way to the bottom of our tenon, which means we have about a 1/2 inch of a base left after we do our carve. Wall thickness is ranging up here from about a 1/2 inch at its thinnest spot, I think was over here. Yeah, and right here we're a 1/2 inch. And as you get further out though, this wall thickness here is still quite thick. So, and I can't really reach it with this tool. When I get in there, tool is showing that I'm about 3/4 of an inch. And then the bottom, I can still work some of this material right here to get a little rounder bottom, but that's about it. So we're getting close. I'm being very careful now taking out the tool because we've got the perfect smooth up here at the mouth. This is going to be a dangerous thing to sand. Oh yeah, we're nice and smooth. When someone puts their hand in there, they're going to go, oh, okay, you did some work there. I can see it. And still a little rim at the bottom that I'd like to take care of, and I think I have to do that with a straight tool. I don't think I can use the shear scraper tool in here. I really feel like that's going to catch. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm a little afraid of it. Could just be me. I need some time with Trent to understand it. But this scraper is a negative rake scraper, and I guess if I put it in at just a slight angle, can I reach all this area here? Well, I might be able to just get a nice clean bottom in there, but I think I'm going to be better off with the straight carbide on the very bottom. It's going to give me the highest degree of confidence anyway. And a lot of times when you're getting in here, I think your tools are probably very important. I love this Trent Bosch system, but I also think your confidence is just as important as your tools. If you come in with an unsteady hand or an unsteady plan of attack, I think you have a bigger chance of making a critical error. So let's go nice and straight. Got to leave myself quite a bit of material here. I want to make sure we're just slight canted angle. Actually, no, we're going to be going straight in on this one. So we're going to go straight up and down. And we're just going to be, I'm going to see if I can feel it in here. I'm going to get all the way in and that slide. There'll be plenty of room here for me to slide that all the way around the bottom now. Yep. So we will get a very nice finish on the bottom is my goal. And then the sanding of that is going to be a stick and a dowel with like a homemade sanding mop on it. So we can get in there with a couple of different grits. I usually go out to about 320 on the inside of these. Anywhere that someone can touch, I want to make sure that they can't feel anything other than the very goodness of what we want them to see. Now, I can't deal with stuff I can't reach, right? So there could end up being a catch or a tool mark or something, but if I can't see it and I can't reach to sand it, I'm assuming that it's that's okay for me, and as an art piece, I'm going to be okay with that as well. I'm hoping that a client also would be less inclined to get out a borescope and try to figure out if you really have it together or not. So I'm going to give you guys a view of the camera up here. Hold on. We'll just do a couple of shots like this so you guys can see what I'm looking at up on the screen. So I start to touch right there on the inside of the ball. So I'm really, really careful to not go in too hard, too aggressively. So the tool, again, we're going all the way in, and then we're rotating it to the side. So right here, I can still feel a little bump. So I'm going to try to just deal with just that bump. That's all. Now there are a couple of wormholes and stuff that I'm not going to try to sand out or turn away from. It's part of the character of this piece. But everything around here now feels nice and smooth. And when I get back far enough and don't block the light, I see a nice round bottom. I see one tool mark there that I want to get out before trying to stick sanding stuff in there, because the sanding out the bottom on a dowel takes quite a bit of time. So let me see if I can feel it here. So I'll be real gentle with that. We'll get that done. Okay. I think that did quite a bit. We'll see how much shavings come out of there. Quite a bit, so that should have removed that lump. And again, I'm using a stick as a feeler gauge here. If I don't feel anything, that should be good. Let's see if we see anything that bothers us. I don't know, I think so. I'm gonna have to go get a flashlight, guys. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, as you can see, we're set back up for the bent tool. I got it in here, and I can run the cutting edge across the other lump now. It's over here since we flattened out the bottom some more. So all I'm going to do is work on this one lump, and then I think we're going to be ready. I think that would have gotten it. Make sure you guys can see how much shavings we get here. A lot of shavings, so let's get our flashlight back out. Now we're down to having to peek inside. And nice and round. There we go. That's what we were looking for. All right, so at that stage now, we have gotten everything we can this direction. We can't feel anything inside of it at all, except for the smooth top we finished up here. The neck is nice and smooth. So now it's going to be time for us to disassemble the hollowing system and get to the inside sanding. We'll start with a dowel and some 80 grit to start with, and we'll let the dowel do its work with kind of a flapper fan kind of thing. I'll show you how I set that up. Okay, so this is how I set up for this kind of sanding. I just kind of wrap a piece of paper, it's just standard 3M stuff, around a dowel. I stick the dowel into my drill. Oops. And then it'll flap around in there, and it usually does a pretty good job. It's not gonna, you know, we're talking about physically, we want, if someone's gonna put their hand in there, we want them to feel smooth, no ridges or anything like that, and this generally does the trick. So I started out at about 500 RPM, and I just let her go. And that is that. We should have smooth in there, knocked off any ridges. We'll get our magic flashlight out again so we peek. Let me see if I can get this thing into a little brighter. There we go, nice narrow spot there. And with burl, you really don't get a lot of sanding lines, which is really interesting. So I will now, you look right in the middle, looks good. No real tool lines. So I'm going to go ahead and blow that out, get sawdust out, and then we'll move on to the next grit. Such a pretty piece of wood. Okay, so I'm going to do that, rinse and repeat on the different grits on the inside in here, and when we're ready to take the foot, or start carving the foot, I'll bring you back over, but we're going to put this up on a jam chuck this way. So this is going to be our jam chuck. Believe it or not, this is a big piece for that. That'll be our jam chuck. We'll have the tailstock center on the other, live center on the other end holding this in, and then we can carve narrow the base down so we can turn it into some. But let's just start out right here, freshly sharpened bowl gouge, and we'll take some nice light cuts because this thing is held on by an 1 1/8 dowel in the headstock up here in a small chuck and the live center. So that's all we have right now supporting this. So we've got to be really, really gentle. As you can see, it's a little out of round, and that's kind of expected after the way we have it mounted. It's a super gentle cuts here. Trying to determine if I have enough material to do the feet I'm planning on doing, and I think I do. If we pull this back around, we're going to have some spalt here and stuff to deal with, but we're going to come all the way up to this ridge, and if we keep that material rolling down to keep our arc flowing, I think we'll be fine. But it's not ideal. I probably should have left another 1/2 inch of total material on the bottom, but I was so concerned about maintaining the depth of the piece for that kind of that dramatic effect that the feet ended up kind of getting secondary. That little being out of line means this is going to have to be sanded differently, but oh yeah, this some bark inclusion, beautiful wood down here though, look at that. So once we peel this back to where our feet are going to be, I'll work on sanding that and getting nice clean cuts. But this is going to be the material we're going to make our feet out of. So it's not super deep, but those are going to be kind of cool little feet shadow line. The other option we have right now is we could round this into a beautiful bead. If you look at how pretty this this wood is, it might make a much nicer bead than some rough carved feet. Let's do a little more scraping before we make that decision. So we'll sand that up. What do you guys think? Nice bead down here for the foot. We'll roll this, round this over, have a nice burl bead. Maybe put a little texture on the bottom there. I think that might be real nice. Either way, I can make that decision because I need a bead anyway to make the foot. So let's work on that bead. See what I'm doing there is kind of establishing where the feet are going to be, or the bead, and working this material. I really like how pretty this material is. I think a nice big ring here might look pretty. But we just got to keep working that material up first. See, I'm leaning towards that bead instead. Just look at how pretty that wood is. All that burl. Hate to get rid of that. So we'll keep working on this. It's a round bead and see how it looks. It's going to be a nice shadow line there. I'm going to go ahead and finish rounding that off. This material is wanting to tear up, so we need to get in there with a very sharp bowl gouge. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen up, and I'll be right back. Okay, back with the perfect, nice sharp edge here. Let's see if we can clean that up. Yeah, I like that. We're going to round this all the way now. And yeah, it's pretty. And we'll pull this all together, one flat right here so we can sign. But the rest of this is going to be follow the same shape as the bowl out here. So it's going right down, it's finishing the curve. And I think I like it. Looks good. I'll just round the bottom here. This bead all the way in. We can get a good cut on there. I think we're ready to get into some serious sanding now, but look at that. That'll be just a solid burl bead down there. A little bit more shadow line than I normally would put on something this size. Maybe could have made it a little larger. But again, we still could cut this now if we wanted to do those into tripod feet. But I don't think there's enough mass there to really justify it. So I'm going to pass on that this time around. And I'm going to get to sanding. I'm going to use 3-inch discs with Abernet for the rest of this. And I'll bring you back when we're ready to put some finish on. It is polishing time. I went ahead and stripped everything off from the first polishing so we could sand everything concentrically and get rid of any lines. So the first step obviously is we're going to rub in a little of our grit everywhere before we crank it up and polish it off. I like to put the grit on first when I have a kind of interesting natural edge like this up on top, mostly so we don't spill over and get any up into that top area where we haven't decided yet what kind of finish we're going to put up there. So I might brush on an epoxy coated finish, or maybe do something with I don't know, some lacquer maybe. Haven't figured it out yet. I really don't feel like I can get shellac in all those little spots and burl eyes and stuff without creating an ugly look. So I'm going to be concerned about that, obviously. And I went ahead and resanded all of the bark inclusion filling we did with the blackwood up here. So that's looking pretty good. And then this bottom section really turned out nice. Some beautiful wood here. I don't think I could have gone wrong had I decided against this kind of funky burl on top design. If we had gone from the other direction and had made this the bottom of the bowl coming up, we would have had a beautiful, unbelievable figure in there. I'm looking at what I'm seeing here at the bottom. But I think this is going to capture the most out of the piece of wood. And for that, I'm very grateful. Again, this came from Burl Wood Supply Company. If you don't follow them on Instagram, you should. They always have great wood. Majority of his sales that I'm aware of that go out into the wilds go through eBay. He's got an eBay account, and a lot of his stuff has got zero reserve on it. You just get out and bid on it. the really, really fantastic pieces, I've seen some of them go without being bid on, and I'm like, whoa. But at some point, you got a lot of wood. you got to be judicious in what you put your money on. But I mean, he's always got something up there that's pretty amazing. So I would definitely check out Burl Wood Supply on Instagram. Then links to all their different places where they sell their stuff. But I think most of it, like I said, is going to be on eBay. So if you're an eBay guy, you can get some amazing, once in a lifetime kind of burls from this guy. Okay, I am going to go ahead and speed her up. Work this into the bottom and stuff. Again, this is the grit, not the shine. It still gives it a pretty look, but we're gonna just work it in, and then we'll put on the shine. But I want to work all that out of the wood. There's a lot of sawdust, a lot of open pores, little bug holes and stuff in the this piece. But boy, it's sanded to 800 is what I stopped at. I wasn't seeing. I gotta be careful here. Don't know what's we're nice and tight. Oh, just put too much pressure on it. Let's crank it up a bit. Just can't put too much pressure on it, but I am gonna have to crank the speed up here when we go to the shine. So we really want to work out all of the sawdust and stuff. And then we really want to melt the shine, and that's going to be the best look. So it looks like in the bottom here I've got it nice and clean. Yep. Okay, we're ready for some shine. Shine on, shiny, shiny. This is going to just be a mineral oil, beeswax, carnauba, little lemon essence. Sometimes I've been told, and I don't know if it's true or not because I haven't tried it, that I should do this after I do the buffing wheel. After I do my white diamond. I got dog hair in there. So I can put the white diamond on and the carnauba over there at that wheel. But I usually do that last after I've worked the wax into all the pores and got the best shine I think I'm going to be able to get with the piece of wood. Then I'll take it over to the wheel usually. And again, I'm applying this differently than I normally would. I normally would just have the wheels, the piece spinning fast in the on the lathe and put it on, but I don't want to catch my finger on any of these little burl eyes, and I don't want any of the wax to get up onto the burls where we haven't decided how we're going to finish them yet. So I think these are called burl eyes. Didn't they call it right? All these little prickly parts here? Those called burl eyes? I think that's right. This bottom is amazing. It's kind of fun when the bottom ends up being the best looking part of your piece. That piece of wood down there is just gorgeous. I think I have a little bit of offcut of that. Can't wait to make a pen or something out of it. That's really pretty. All right, here we go. Just melt it in. Of course, I'm gonna have to probably redo some of this bottom when I cut off that little tenon on the base there, and I'll peel that away with the pointy gouge as we go. Just trying to create a little friction here. Hopefully in your camera angle there you're seeing the reflection and the coming into it, the shine really showing up. You can see it on my end over here. I can probably read a book in this reflection where my hands are. And again, these finishes do require maintenance. I mean, you don't get I guess there's nothing for free, but you put a hard wax finish on something, you're still going to have to wax it and dust it and take good care of it. Where a lot of these lacquer, varnish, these poly finishes that people do that are like plasticky, those seem to last quite a bit longer. If that's a main concern for you, you might want to consider that kind of finish instead. Now I can see in some of the filling here, there's a few little fine scratches. So I'm going to get out some pitas. And what we're going to do with that is just work just the scratch areas. And I can get out a buffing pad on the drill too if we need to. But I'm going to just kind of get in here and see if these are super fine. They're from the 800 grit, but I can still see them in the fill here. So I'm just going to kind of circle that in with the little pitas, and that should let me buff those right out. I also have a buffer now, so I was thinking about trying the buffing pad and some compounds and seeing, just as an experiment, see what it's like. but I can't really figure out in my head how I'm going to mount that, how I mount this down to use the buffer on it. It's kind of like a car buffer, a slow speed random orbital buffer. It's just a cheap one off Amazon, but I got it to do cutting boards, so I could get a better shine on the cutting boards. I didn't really have a way of getting anything on there, and it made a big difference. And I've watched a lot of guys do it in their big epoxy projects and stuff, so I figured, hey, having one in the shop isn't going to kill me. Not for 89 bucks anyway. Look at that right there. Isn't that pretty? I think that's the best. That's my favorite part on the top, is that way that burl, just all those eyes came out. And I'm really happy with our fill from the bark inclusion. Both of them turned out really nice. That goes all the way through into the unit. We already were cutting into it right about here, and I was getting afraid it was going to blow apart. I knew that we didn't have to have a, 1/8 of an inch wall in this thing, so I let it go. There you go. I'm going to go ahead and peel that part off there and sand it. We'll sign it, put it on the spinner, and come back for some last thoughts after that. Appreciate you guys spending your time with me. Hopefully you're learning something, or at least learning what not to do. That might sometimes be the lesson. All right, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, well, we're down to the last little bits for this one. So I appreciate you making it this far into the video. Really does mean a lot to me to get to spend my time and my little crafts and my silly ideas with you guys. So what I've decided for the burl portion is to use some Zinsser's Bullseye. Let me see if I can get that in the picture for you. Standard old, where are we here? There we go. Zinsser's Bullseye shellac. So shellac is a super easy to apply finish. I barely ever use it, but when you have something you really can't use the wax on and a buffing wheel and stuff like I normally would do, I thought that the Zinsser's would be perfect for that. So I've already put one coat on here, but I just wanted to show you how really easy it is. And the shellac will melt itself. So putting multiple coats on something is super, super easy. Just gonna get that together here. Okay, a little bit of shellac on there, and then you just kind of dab it into all of the little nooks and crannies. And I'm waiting for my brush to loosen up a bit. But on the real flat surfaces, I'll probably still do one or two little attacks with some light grit sandpaper, maybe some 600 grit or something. But for the rest of the burl, I'm just gonna put a shellac on the top surface. It'll make it very unique, and then the bottom is still going to be my traditional wax finish that you saw me apply earlier. So I hope that makes sense, and I'll show you the finished product after it dries, and we'll give it a little spin on the old spinneroonie. Well, there she is. This is where we're going to stop for now. I've put a couple of coats of shellac up there on the burl section just to give it a little pop. I sanded the bottom to 800 and then took it to the Beal system, and I have buffed it out with some white diamond and carnauba. There's no finish on that other than wax. The top, we're going to stick with the shellac, and overall I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Definitely a challenging project. Show you here up in the top. So there's our top. The shellac is still drying, and I'm still going to have to buff that out probably. But got our all the way on the inside there. Let's see, we did an okay job. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick at its average. The thinnest spot's about 3/8, and then there's some spots that go all the way out to 1.25 inches where the wood is really thin and I didn't want to break through. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this project. It was definitely a fun one. Look forward to hearing from you. If you did like it, I'd sure appreciate a subscription, a like, a comment. It always helps me out. And until then, get out there and turn something.